Good morning, Central Kentucky. This is Sandra Leslie White coming to you live from WJMM Studios here in Versailles, Kentucky, just outside of Lexington, Kentucky. And it's a beautiful morning here. How about you? How about the morning where you are if you're listening in from WJMM.com across the country or Facebook Live? I wonder if your morning is as beautiful, cool, crisp, clear. Starting to feel like fall, even though we're late into September. Here we go with a beautiful new day, and I just am excited about this word today. And those of you who follow me know that we're in Hosea, and yesterday I read through the whole chapter 4 of Hosea, and it was just sort of, oh my God, sort of really gripping to me. But today I just realized how deep and rich and important Hosea 4 is. So I am continuously surprised by this book and what the Lord is teaching me, and I hope I'm imparting it to you in a way that makes you think and that your spirit will really soar with just the beauty of it and the truth of it and just even the conviction of it. Conviction is good, when it's the Lord. And He just wants us to live a life that is truly abundant. And that abundance only comes from Him. So let's look at this in the context of Hosea chapter 4, verse 1. And the question today is, have you ever been involved in a lawsuit? So let's just go from the beauty and wonder of all things to a lawsuit. Oh my goodness. I remember the first and only time I was sued. Yes, I was. Decades ago by a graphic artist in Houston, Texas. I was so flipped out about this. But one of my oil and gas clients came in. I had a PR firm then and just said to me, congratulations, when he heard about my lawsuit. I was so upset. He said, you're a success. You've had your first lawsuit. Well, that was my first and only, and I don't really think that made me feel very successful, but I thought it was an interesting comment. I settled out of court and moved on. But what about moving on from God filing a lawsuit against you or me or the land? And oh my goodness, is that possible? And what would be the grounds for having a case against us? We're going to jump into that with some surprising answers as we look into Hosea chapter 4 verse 1. Let's just go into the New American Standard Version this morning. If you're just tuning in, this is Sandra Leslie White. In Hosea chapter 4 verse 1. Listen to the word of the Lord, O sons of Israel. For the Lord has a case against the inhabitants of the land, because there is no faithfulness or kindness or knowledge of God in the land. All right, here we are going verse by verse now in Hosea chapter 4. You know the story of Hosea. You know that he has been involved very intimately with the prophet from chapter 1 all the way through chapter 3, and this dynamic between his prophet and a prostitute named Gomer who became his wife and kept running off. So now he is shifted again into chapter 4 where he's got a case against the land. So today's message is titled Lawsuit in the Land. And let's look carefully at what Yahweh is saying. Now we're backing up to not this conversation with Hosea, like chapter 1, not this conversation with Gomer, like chapter 2, not this conversation again with Hosea, chapter 3. We're going on to now a conversation, a soliloquy, I said, with the land and its inhabitants. So now we're talking about Israel and the sons of Israel. And for those of you who see the sons of Israel, and in the day, we know that Hosea was penned in the latter part of the 8th century BC to the 10 tribes of Israel. the northern kingdom. But you're going to notice that Judah and Benjamin are also referenced here in this chapter, the southern tribes, the tribes of the southern kingdom. So we are really going to see something fascinating happening here with this entire chapter as Yahweh begins to address his people as a whole. And for those of us today that see Israel as the church, and there's certainly room for that, and understanding that we are the new Israel, we're the new Jerusalem, we are Israel, we are the body of Christ, we are the believers on the earth. If there's a distinction for you about Israel and Israel specific, the Hebrew people today, it all applies for us. We are dealing with transcendence in time when we talk about Israel. So when he talks about the sons of Israel, let's go there and begin our time together in Hosea 4:1. So he starts saying to listen to the word of the Lord. Now, this is so exciting because Yahweh is saying, listen. Yahweh is saying, listen. I could only imagine running around, doing kind of what I do every single day, even though it's good and I'm attempting to serve the Lord and running around and doing the radio show or finishing my book or coaching or running around, preparing for my daughter's wedding, just running around doing, what I do, which is crazy. And I just hear the voice of the Lord, of Yahweh, going, listen to the word of the Lord, O sons of Israel. So I think this is a time of halting. We've been in a lot of action, Hosea 1-3, but it's chapters 1-3. It's time to halt, to come to a screeching halt. Have you ever seen those beautiful, fabulous, athletic reining horses? I used to ride one. When they come to a sliding stop, it is time for a sliding stop when Yahweh says, listen to the word of the Lord. So he's talking about himself, O sons of Israel. He's talking about the northern kingdom. He's talking about the southern kingdom. He's talking about all of Israel. He's talking about us. He's coming to a sliding stop here to say, listen. For the Lord, it's interesting that he goes into third person there, I think. For the Lord has a case against the inhabitants of the land. So we can look at this interesting dynamic of Hosea going in and out of the voice of Yahweh. And you can look at this and say, well, that must be Hosea. Maybe it's Yahweh. And sometimes it's very hard to distinguish between the two. And a shout out this morning to Caleb Gilmore, my Hebrew scholar, PhD. I'm sure he's close to achieving that from Hebrew Union College, who helped me with the translation work of my book in Hosea. And he said that oftentimes throughout Hosea, it is difficult to discern who's speaking because Hosea, the prophet, is so interconnected with Yahweh. Wouldn't that be a wonderful relationship to have? That you are so interconnected with Yahweh and what you may have to say that it's difficult to know who's speaking. But we're going to go on and look at the facts that the Lord has a case against the inhabitants of the land. All right, so he's looking at the land. He's looking at Israel, the land, and the sons of Israel, his people, even though, and some scholars would say that the kingdom was never really divided. So, I see the merit in that here. But it's the inhabitants of the land, it's the Hebrew people of the land who have been greatly influenced by the Canaanite gods and the effects of the Assyrian people who are coming in to conquer Israel in due season. So we are looking at the inhabitants of the land. We're looking at the fact that they are not just a wayward people, but they are a vulnerable people. And so they are disconnecting with Yahweh, and they are looking to other gods to satisfy their needs. And sometimes their needs, I'm sure, would be dire. But they are looking to other gods because the other gods are more promising. I think about the other gods, those pagan gods, as being sort of the microwave remedy for a quick meal, as opposed to the crock pot, which takes a long time to simmer, to prepare, to create a savory, far more healthy meal. So here we are with the microwave gods promising quick results, and Yahweh with this long, savoring plan to provide for his people. And so there is, according to Yahweh, no faithfulness or kindness or knowledge of God in the land. So this is the case that has brought up against God's people. So I want to take these one by one, and we may spend a little bit more time in each of these in the next day or two. But I think it's important that we look at what this case is, first of all. And I want to refer to my, scholar, Spiros Zodhiates, and this understanding of what this case against the sons of Israel really means. And so I'm coming to you from the lexical age to the Old Testament, according to Spiros Zodhiates. So this word case is rib. It's a masculine Hebrew noun. It means quarrel, contest, which is whether it's personal or legal. Strife, contention, controversy, feud, dispute, a judicial or forensic cause. And he goes on to say, in some poetic passages, it has a distinct connotation of chastisement or punishment. It's contrasted with the word quietness. There are 60 occurrences of this Hebrew noun in the Old Testament. Covers the entire process of adjudication in various parts of a lawsuit. Even conflicts outside the courtroom employ this term. A quarrel between individuals or between groups. It is desirable to settle out of court if possible. All right, so that's this case against the inhabitants of the land, and it's far better to settle this outside of court, but that's why I'm calling this a lawsuit in the land, and that we've got grounds for a lawsuit that are clearly celestial. I want to say they are clearly countercultural to what grounds for a lawsuit would be today. And that's what to me is fascinating and important and deep, and what we have so much to learn from in Hosea 4:1. So just to introduce this today, there is no faithfulness. Okay, no faithfulness. That word is used 127 times in the Old Testament. It means firmness, stability, faithfulness of man or of God. And it is a principal Hebrew word for truth. Wow. It's used frequently of God and expresses one of his key attributes in the Old Testament, a very important word. Matter of fact, all three of these are significant for us. So in this last minute or so, he then goes on to kindness. And this kindness, there's no kindness in the land. And that word is considered one of the most important Hebrew words in the Old Testament, chekad. And that is an attitude of love, which contains mercy. It doesn't have to do with covenant or obligation. It has to do with love, an attitude of love. And thirdly, and this one is packed, knowledge of God. And we'll go into this. That means, and it goes along with, there's no knowledge of God, there's no fear of the Lord in the land. It denotes a proper relationship between God and man. A man or woman or child who truly obeys him. Ooh, and there's some strong implications of this in the Messianic age, and we'll discuss that in tomorrow's show. I'm looking forward to continuing with you in this lawsuit in the land. God bless you today.